Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is April the 16th and now it's 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. I hope you are doing well. I want to start by asking you if you can see my image. I have a different screen when I look here at the YouTube studio. I just want to make sure if you can see my image. Let me know. I see Bill. Bill says, Oi Luciano, how's the weather? Got your cafe? Let's go. Status on US visas. Any changes? Yes. So we do have a change, Bill. And finally, right? Like that's the fourth time. I guess the fourth time is a charm, not the third, because on the third time, the Brazilian government was not able to get the e-visa working, but now is working for sure. Let me just get your feedback if you guys can see me. I want to know if you can see me or not. Unfortunately, here on YouTube Studio, I just see like the thumbnail for my channel. I don't see my image on the studio. So let me know. Please let me know if you guys can see me or not. Yes, everything is good. Thank you so much, Bill. Glad to know. Yeah, so let's get started by the the confirmation that finally Brazil has restarted, right? Not started, because there was a long time practice for Brazil to require citizens from the United States, Canada, and Australia to get a visa to enter Brazil under the principle of reciprocity, meaning that because those countries, they do ask Brazilians for a visa, Brazil understands that it should ask for a visa as well. So let's share, while we kind of, explain a little bit more about that. I want to share just to illustrate, right? Like, I mean, this was all over the news in Brazil, about this change. And the good news, I think, it is that the visa is an electronic visa, right? Just like how you would get a visa probably for Europe, and some other countries, meaning that you don't need to go to the consulate or send, physical documents to the consulate. It means you can apply through VFS. VFS is a private service provider that was hired by the Brazilian government to handle the e-visa application. Okay, so pretty easy. It is something that most people would be able to do by themselves. We do have some clients that, just because they have an existing relationship with us, they would rather having us handling the visa application. But again, it's pretty simple. I would say most people would be able to get done by themselves. The fee is also pretty reasonable. Okay, it's $80 US. $80 or not even 100. I think it's a reasonable, amount. Usually Brazilians, when they are going to apply for a U.S. visa, it could get very, very expensive, particularly if they are hiring a consulting service to increase their chances of securing a U.S. visa, right? So not a bad deal for U.S. citizens at all, okay? And then once you get the electronic visa is going to be good, usually for 10 years. But the visa is also linked to your passport, meaning that if your passport expires a couple of years from now, your e-visa is also going to stop working at that point, okay? In terms of allowed days in the country, it remains pretty much the same thing. U.S. citizens, as well Canadians and Australians, can stay in Brazil for up to 90 days. Remember that immigration is never a right, it's a privilege. So if the officer for some reason decides to give you less than 90 days, that's somewhat common to occur. And you may try to get an extension while in Brazil for an additional period of time. Okay, so there you go, Bill. That was a good question for sure. Temperature in São Paulo is in the mid 70s. We have a lot of rain. It's kind of raining season in São Paulo as we speak. And let's check what else we have here in terms of participation. Yes, Bill was asking for how long is the visa good for? Exactly, Bill. So just like I told you, 90 days of stay, but in terms of how long the e-visa is going to last, is up to 10 years. Remember that you have a cap by how long your passport is valid for. So in some cases, we have clients here, like when we tell them about the limitation of the passport on the e-visa, some of them, they are going to say, listen, you know what, I'm going to, and of course, if they don't have like a trip in their schedule, they are going to opt to renew their passports and get like a full 10 years before they actually apply for the e-visa. So that's a strategy you could consider as well. Let's see who else we have over here. All right, let me go back to this screen. All right, we have Aaron. Aaron, if Canadians boycott Brazil like they are the U.S., I wonder how long it will take for them to reverse it. Yes, Aaron. A lot of international disputes on the economic side of things, right? And it's very interesting because we can probably connect this point to the news, like we usually take a look at the news. And today is almost like an exception. Like the first headline here is about soccer. As I'm sure you know, like Brazilians are pretty big with soccer, right? Like, I mean, that's the international, or that's the national sport for Brazilians. It's soccer, right? Like, I mean, American football and basketball, like they are pretty minor, right? Like, I mean, American football, I would say, is practically non-existing in Brazil. Basketball, we like it a little bit more. But in terms of, let's say, a TV share, right? Like how much time they would show on a TV, I would say soccer is probably something like 99% of the time, and 1% is going to be distributed among every other type of sport. Maybe other than racing, particularly Formula One. Like this has been traditional in Brazil because we had many famous pilots, right? Like Ayrton Senna, Emerson Fittipaldi, and so it's also like something major. So I would say maybe soccer. I don't know. Let's correct you. Maybe 96%, and racing. I would say maybe 3% and 1% among the other varieties. Okay, and you're gonna see very interesting down here. We have news, about President Trump. I'm gonna guess, there is something on President Trump on the cover of the Brazilian newspapers every single day, no exception, right? It's pretty interesting how attached Brazilians are in terms of U.S. culture. And of course, like all the changes going on in the United States, they are going to impact the global trade for sure. So not surprising that, President Trump is taking such an oversized role in Brazilian news. But what I think is pretty interesting is that, like, after President Trump comes President Lula, is almost like an illustration that Brazilians actually care more about the United States politics than maybe we care about our own. Maybe that's a stretch, but just trying to highlight something that's interesting, right? Like you see news about President Trump coming. Usually before you're going to see something about President Lula. Okay, that's pretty interesting. But just like Aaron was sharing, like the disputes among, nations, particularly the United States and China, is actually a major headline today for the UOL portal. UOL is one of the largest, if not the largest, news portal in Brazil. We have a Kobe. Kobe, welcome, Kobe. Kobe is asking if I bring used electronics like a laptop, PlayStation, microphone, will the officials at the airport in Brazil try to impose some tax? I saw online that this could be a problem. Very interesting question, Kobe. And so let me just, give you a short intro because we have other participants here. And so, in Brazil, and I would say other countries in which, electronics are going to be expensive because they are not usually produced locally. And we have really high tariffs when it comes to importing any type of thing to Brazil. What is going to happen is like people coming from abroad, particularly Brazilians, of course, they are going to try to bring as much stuff as they can, right? They are going to bring iPhones, they are going to try to bring laptops, they are going to try to bring, small electronics that would cost pretty much a fortune in Brazil. And because of that, Brazil is going to impose a maximum amount that you can bring to Brazil without triggering traditional taxes, right? And by or tariffs, if you will, right? That's the new name of the game, right? And tariffs in Brazil, they're going to be traditionally 100%, right? 100% when you do not declare at the airport. When you declare, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like I don't have this information from the top of my head, but I think if you declare, like they give you a break, they're going to charge you just 50% in tax. If you don't declare and you exceed the allowed quota of 500 US dollars, then they are going to charge you, the full amount, which is 100%, right? So that's why Kobe is asking this question. Kobe probably knows about, the quota and about how happy the Brazilian Federal Police is in terms of either make you pay the 100% tariff or seize whatever you're bringing on top of the quota, okay, if you will. So the way it works, Kobe, is like this. There is a certain level of discretion, or there is a lot of discretion actually by the the officers at the customs, and what they are gonna look at is gonna be something like this: like, are you bringing this stuff for your personal use, or are you bringing this stuff to live in Brazil, right? Or let's say in another way, like, are you gonna return with this stuff back to the United States? Or is this stuff going to stay in Brazil? Because if they see that stuff as something that you're bringing just like for you to use during your stay in Brazil, most probably they are not going to use that as part of the quota. So think about your cell phone, right? Like, I mean, it does not matter if you have an iPhone 16, and as long as they can see that this is not a new device, it's something that you're using on your trip, of course, it is not going to count against your quota. Same thing, a laptop, right? Like, so if you have a laptop and, it's a used laptop, it's in your bag, you open the laptop and there is a picture of your children, for instance, that's a personal item. This is not going to be considered for the quota, okay? However, If you are bringing, just like in my example, you have your own phone and you have your laptop, and in addition to your laptop in your backpack, you have another laptop, right? Let's say you're bringing a MacBook inside a box, so they can tell, all right, this thing is not being used, like this thing is brand new. So if they see that the item is brand new, yes, they are gonna apply the quota to that item. And of course, a MacBook, if it's a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air, something like this is gonna be above. This is gonna be beyond the $500, and you're gonna need to pay potentially 100% tax on the difference between the amount for this MacBook and the allowed 500 quota, okay? So it's pretty common for people when they are bringing stuff from the United States, particularly Brazilians, right? Like myself, whenever I'm bringing stuff from the United States, the first thing I'm gonna do is to discard every single box and paperwork, and not because I wanna deceive customs that to say that this thing is not new, but I want to make sure that they understand I'm actually using as something personal. So if I'm bringing like a MacBook, the first thing I'm gonna do is like to discard everything other than the MacBook itself, and then I'm gonna install my programs. I'm gonna have my files on it, and if I do so, typically the Brazilian Federal Police, they are not gonna charge you they are not gonna charge you a tax on that, right? And even though, Colby, I'm gonna assume you're not a Brazilian, if you're bringing stuff. If you're bringing stuff from abroad, like the United States, and this thing is like in mint condition, and they can clearly tell that you're not using as a personal item, yes, you would potentially pay, the 100% tax over everything. It could be a PlayStation 5, as in your example. It could be like a MacBook Pro, like a laptop. It could be like a fancy microphone. A microphone, it could cost usually between $100 a couple of $100, so that would be under the quota. But remember, they would actually consider everything that you're bringing. So if you have a brand new microphone for a couple of $100, you're bringing a PlayStation 5. Let's say that's they have, I think now, a light version, which is like, I think, $499 US. So just the PlayStation 5 alone, you would probably, take all your quota, and everything else would be potentially charged a tax for. Okay, so yes, this could be a problem, or that's actually something customary in Brazil when you bring in new stuff from abroad. Okay, we have also some interesting questions related to that. Sometimes we have like clients who are bringing jewelry from abroad, right? Like the U.S. citizen is gonna bring like a wedding ring from abroad, and yes, if the wedding ring is brand new, and you bring this thing from abroad, in theory you would have to pay taxes on it. So, but if the U.S. citizen is wearing the ring, then it becomes a personal item. Typically, the Brazilian Federal Police is not gonna charge a tax for that. Okay, now. As you may tell, I'm hammering the typically, right? Because we can never forecast the outcome for any type of situation. All we have, it's our opinion based on our experience, and it's going to be up to the Brazilian Federal Police to decide how they are going to deal with a certain situation as it occurs. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Marco is asking, I travel to Brazil 2 to 3 times per year. Must I get a different visa each time? No, Marco, no. So the e-visa is going to be good for 10 years, right? Meaning that you can use this e-visa multiple times. Most probably than not, you're not going to get the full 10 years because your passport is going to expire sometime in between now and 10 years, right? But you can keep using this e-visa. So no, you don't need to spend $80 per trip on an e-visa. The e-visa is actually good for the whole 10 years, all right? So that's pretty sweet deal. Like I said, It was more like when President Lula wanted to implement the visa, it was more like from this ideological reciprocity perspective. But President Lula wants like U.S. citizens to keep coming to Brazil, right? So that's the idea of asking for a visa, but not make this visa like a burden to foreign citizens, right? Particularly U.S., Canadians, and Australians, if you will. All right, Marco. So you would be able to use the same e-visa for your 2 to 3 times per year, okay? Aaron says, as a digital nomad, I use some pretty expensive equipment. I might need to bring a 2025 10,000 Mac Studio soon. Unboxed, I could face a huge tariff. So that's a little bit concerning, Aaron, because like a MacBook, it's something that you're gonna use in a trip. Mac Studio, not so much, right? Like Mac Studio, I would assume that's something you're gonna potentially bring to live in Brazil, particularly if you are a digital nomad, you are a resident, right? And now I would say there is a gray area because as a digital nomad, if you have the residency approved, you have the resident card, right? And in theory, the Brazilian Federal Police will need to decide if that's something that you have previously in your possession and you're just bringing with you to Brazil, or if you are bringing this stuff brand new to Brazil, right? So what's gonna be the understanding? Is Aaron bringing new stuff to Brazil? If yes, you would pay the either 50 or 100% over the 10,000 US dollars. But if it is something that is beat up, right? Like, there is a scratch on the Mac Studio, like they can tell this thing has been used for, 6 months. I would say there is a chance they would not charge you a tax for it, okay? And again, this is just like my opinion. Federal police at the customs, they have a lot of discretion in terms of assessing how they are gonna tax you, okay? And it's very common, like whenever we have these interactions, particularly in our consultations, like foreign citizens, they would want to have a certainty, right? That they say, all right, but what does the law say, right? And the law, it doesn't always address things. So there is no law addressing digital nomads, right? So there is no law out there saying, well, for digital nomads, they can, bring stuff without paying tax. There is no such language. So we needed to take into consideration glimpses of different laws, or different laws, and try to imagine how a specific customs officer is going to interpret the law based on our experience, right? So I hope that helps. But I agree, Aaron, that's kind of concerning. And I would avoid, if I was in your shoes, like I would avoid bringing a Mac Studio, right? And maybe just get the best MacBook Pro you can get, an M4 Max, right? That should be a pretty reasonable machine. I understand it's not the same thing as a Mac Studio, but you can certainly, or not certainly, I don't want to provide guarantees, but you can most probably get away with bringing the most expensive MacBook Pro you can get, as long, again, as this thing is coming unboxed and you have your files installed on the computer, okay? Colby, that was very helpful. Thanks. Thank you for participating, Colby. Glad to have you over here. Chuck, on the tariff topic, I think I heard that if someone is moving to Brazil as a new resident, you get a one-time exception on the personal items you are bringing in. Chuck, there are 2 routes, right? There is one route which is for usually Brazilians living abroad. They're going to go to a Brazilian consulate and ask for a letter stating that they have been living abroad for 1 year, then they can bring stuff to Brazil back with an exemption. And for residents, Uh, the question I see being asked is whether temporary residents can do so, right? Like if you are a permanent resident, like if you have a residency in Brazil for an undetermined period of time, which is the weird Brazilian way of saying permanent residency, then yes, you're gonna have this opportunity. Now, the digital nomad, it's something that we don't have an answer for that, right? And our recommendation is like if you are a digital nomad, you should not be bringing stuff from abroad. You just have 1 year of stay, even if you are renewing on a continuous basis, and we don't think this is gonna support reasonably the exemption. All right, Chuck. So the exemption is gonna depend on which track you are pursuing. If your track is, for instance, the investment in real estate, we have other clients who are bringing that stuff under the one-time exemption, right? And then there is a specific, like a few specific shipping companies that could assist with that, right? Like the brokerage of bringing stuff to Brazil, like we don't handle that directly, but yes, we do have like referrals for our clients. All right. Okay, we have. All right, we have Kobe also. If I haven't traveled anywhere in 5 years and on my new passport, the first country I visit is Brazil, could this cause some concern for the immigration? My first country I visit is Brazil. Right. I mean, I don't see a reason, Kobe. Maybe I'm not following your reasoning over here. Like, what would be the reason for the immigration officer to be concerned, right? Like, I mean, Brazil is usually, right? Like, I mean, most of the time accommodating, and like, I mean, if you're just coming to Brazil, you have the e-visa, right? Let's assume you are from the U.S., Kobe, and you have the e-visa, and you haven't been traveling anywhere for 5 years, but you got the e-visa. You shouldn't have an issue. You shouldn't have an issue to enter Brazil, all right, Kobe? Bill, Luciano, is there a website link for the e-visa you can give us? Yes, that's a good question, Bill. Let me get it for you. All right. Almost there. So I'm gonna provide you guys with the version from the Brazilian government. Okay, first, this is the version in which you can read information firsthand from the Brazilian government. But in this link, and I'm gonna share with you guys here as well, so you can see. So this is the link I gave you, right? This is the official. That's the official Brazilian government portal in which they talk about the e-visa. And then over here within their portal, they're gonna give you the link for VFS. Okay. And you know what's interesting? Like I think this website from VFS, it looks kind of fake, if you will. I'm not sure if it makes sense what I'm telling you, but like it doesn't look like an official portal for applying to an e-visa, right? But this is linked in the Brazilian government website. And as far as I remember, that's exactly how it was a couple of years ago, right? So it still looks like pretty certain to me that this is the correct portal. And I'm going to share with you guys this one as well. Okay. So now that's the link. And VFS, again, VFS is a private company that is working with the Brazilian government as a contractor, right? Like, so they are providing the service to assist with the application. And I remember that was from a couple of years ago. You pay, I think, for the e-visa, you pay $80.79 or something like this. And you know how much VFS makes? I think it's the 79 cents, right? Like, so they are pretty nimble, right? Like, I mean, they assist with a Visa application for $1. Of course, that's just like to provide you the form, you know, to upload the documents and pay the fee. And the $80 actually go to, you know, Brazil. And the 79 or whatever cents, like it's under $1 for sure. This amount goes to VFS, all right? So just some context. I think that's so interesting. All right, Bill, thank you for asking. That was a very good idea. Aaron, unfortunately for the AI workloads, I need a Mac Studio with 512 gigabytes of RAM. Right? Is Portugal more reasonable with digital nomads? Aaron, you know, I can tell you Portugal has pretty comparable prices for equipment, and they are less attached, right? They're less paranoid in terms of, you know, for instance, bringing stuff in. But this is a really, you know, like a powerful machine, right? Like a Mac Studio 512 gigabytes of RAM, right? Very interesting. But yes, Portugal would probably be more accommodating if you're bringing a machine like this. But I would not bring it to Brazil for sure, right? I think there is a really high chance if you go through screening, they would flag that as a professional equipment and most probably would try to charge you a tariff on it, okay? Aaron, sorry for the bad news, but, you know, like, I mean, just sharing what my opinion on what could be the outcome, all right? Kobe, thanks for the help. You're pretty welcome. Matthew Oliveira, I'm always traveling to Brazil with my family every summer. What services related to immigration would I need to travel to Brazil? Right, Matthew. So if you're traveling as a tourist, right, you can have the e-visa. You can have the e-visa handled by yourself, or you can hire the service of you know, some type of service provider to assist with the e-visas, right? Another heads up, particularly when I hear family traveling, is that you need to make sure that all your passports are good for you to travel, right? Like when you have, for instance, 4 or 5 people traveling, it's not uncommon that one of the passports is expired, right? Like nobody really has, you know, time to keep tracking passports. So I suggest that whenever a family is planning an international trip, that they go and check the passports and make sure that the passports are good. Because again, if you have like a passport that is going to be valid for just a year, let's say, if you get the e-visa, it means that the e-visa is going to be good for just a year. And if you renew ahead of time and you get a new passport, let's say a US passport, good for 10 years, and then you get the e-visa is going to last much longer, right? So better deal. There you go. All right, let's take a look here at our backlog of subjects. All right. So that's a common type of question. I like Brazil, and I do travel there, you know, like a couple of times a year, but I am unsure that Brazil is a good place to invest in real estate. Would you recommend me to invest? Right, so I think this is a very personal question, right? Like it really depends on the assets that you have. You know, like if you live elsewhere, I would say, of course, it makes more sense for you to buy a property where you live, but let's assume you already own the house in which you live in your country of origin. This is gonna be this is gonna depend on how much you are connected to Brazil. Okay, I honestly, like my personal opinion is that you know, investment in Brazil just for you know, like financial return is not the best choice. Okay, just because there is a lot of friction for you to buy a property, and there is a lot of friction for you to sell the property, right? And there is also friction for you to upkeep a property in Brazil, right? So when you think about all of the friction, in my head, I say, listen, this is not an investment that I would pursue as a foreign citizen, right? Like if I was not Brazilian, like I am Brazilian, right? And naturally, I have a big, or a reasonable real estate footprint in Brazil. But listen, I am Brazilian. I understand the market. I have a family in Brazil, and so it does make sense to me to invest in Brazil. But let's say like I've been to China, right? Like I've been to China just once. I don't have any connections to China, right? Like so for me, even if you tell me, listen, like returns if you buy real estate in China, they're pretty interesting. Like, I mean, I'm still like, what? Like, I mean, I'm not going to invest in China. I don't want to travel to China, like once a year or, even every other year. And, what about all the friction? Like, I don't know how to buy property in China, right? So I'm going to need to hire professional help. After I buy this property, I need to bring like whatever income I'm getting out of this property to my country. And when I sell, if I have to sell, like, I mean, it's going to be another chunk of money that I'm going to be spending on a service provider, like there is currency exchange. So, I mean, it just doesn't make much sense to me, right? And I hope you appreciate my, honesty here, because we make a lot of money by actually assisting people buy properties in Brazil, right? But whenever I have a consultation with a client, I always walk them through in terms of all this friction involved. And if their connection to Brazil is strong enough, they are going to resist. They are going to resist my speech, and they are going to proceed with buying a property anyhow. But in this case, they are going to be certain that they want to do so for the right reasons, and never because, like a realtor told them, well, invest in Brazil is a pretty good deal, because I don't think it is. All right, I don't think it is, mostly because of the friction in terms of, development of the country. I think Brazil is a pretty decent market, particularly when you invest like in the right cities, in the right locations. Usually, property is going to appreciate in price. Construction in Brazil is generally much more solid than what you see in the United States. In the United States, it's so common, right? Like, I mean, if you have, a serious leakage in a house, it could ruin the entire house. You could have like damages for, literally $100,000. In Brazil, sometimes you see like flooding, and you see properties, getting ready to be reused like a couple of weeks after flooding, right? And so the quality of construction in Brazil is so superior to construction in the United States. From that perspective, it does sound like a good idea to invest in Brazil. So I'm not saying Brazil is a bad place to invest. I'm saying more about all the friction of investing as a foreign citizen. But again, if your connection is strong, let's say you want to retire in Brazil, you're going to be living Brazil for 10 years, right? Like, I mean, that's your plan. I think in this case, it does so much more sense for you to invest in Brazil. I hope that makes sense. Let me take a look at another question here from our backlog. Also invite you to please like our live stream. We have just 5 likes. If you could, take a moment and like our live stream, this is going to help our business, and this is going to help other people just like you to find our content, if you will. I really appreciate that. Let's move to the next one. I am in a relationship with a Brazilian for a couple of years. My partner is asking me to marry. Should I marry or not? Like, I mean, could that bring a risk to my assets in the United States if I marry in Brazil? Right. So a lot of nuances here in this question. Listen, if you're gonna marry or not, of course, this is a very personal type of question. So, most of the time people are gonna marry because of like emotional reasons, right? And usually not rational reasons, right? That's how people get in love. That's how people get in a marriage. Okay. Now, from the Brazilian side, a marriage may also mean access to a more developed country. So many Brazilians, interesting to note, like they are unable to get a visa to travel to the United States, right? Actually, I think the majority of people applying for a U.S. visa in Brazil, they don't get the visa. They are actually denied. So if a Brazilian has like a U.S. spouse, that would give a certain access, almost certain, right? Like never 100%, but very probably access to the United States. Brazilian could go to the United States under the so-called fiancé visa. There is also the green card based on marriage. So, for the Brazilian, I understand, like the benefits of a marriage. For the foreign citizen, like a U.S. citizen, for instance, right? Like, again, that could come to a personal decision, like if you're being in a personal relationship with a Brazilian for, a few years, it could get to a point in which marriage would make sense. Now, regarding the question about assets in the United States, um, it's very difficult for us to have like a forecast of how things are going to play out in the future. But I can tell you that marriage in Brazil is going to be legally valid anywhere, right? Like, I mean, sometimes we have consultations here at the firm, and the person says, "Well, but I'm married in Brazil, not in the U.S., right?" No, you once you marry with someone, it does not matter where you are marrying. The marriage is going to have effects in every single country, right? Like, I mean, there is no such a thing as just marrying in one country but remaining single in another country, right? So even if you are marrying in Brazil, the legal effects of such marriage are certainly, uh, 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 you know, uh, reaching the United States as well, right? So let's say if you have a marriage and like, I mean, you are married to a Brazilian for 10 years, based on Brazilian law. During the course of the 10 years, it also depends on the marriage asset regime, but let's say it is the most common one in Brazil. Whatever assets you are acquiring in the United States during the course of the marriage, even though the marriage is in Brazil, in theory, the Brazilian should be the owner or should co-own the assets that you acquired in the United States during the course of the marriage, right? So as you can see, it's a pretty serious matter. It's not just like marriage in Brazil. It's a marriage, like that's going to have effects everywhere else. And you should think about this carefully. I think, like maybe schedule a consultation to discuss your particular case. Nowadays, also worth to mention that even if you don't marry, if you have a longer term relationship with a Brazilian, or even if it's not that long term, right? Because this is not a requirement anymore, you could be found in a common law marriage. And in Brazil, we call it união estável, meaning that even if you're not marrying, but you are presenting yourself with this Brazilian partner as a couple, this could alone be the basis for a união estável claim, right? And of course, this is usually the case like after the relationship goes south. So, just like, an example, like you have a relationship with a Brazilian for 5 years, and like you're paying the rental for this Brazilian. So this Brazilian is living in a rental property that you're paying the rental. Whenever you are in Brazil, you guys go out, you go to a restaurant. Sometimes you travel to Europe, and then you go back to the United States. Like this would be more than enough for a Brazilian judge to decide that you were actually in a união estável relationship or a common law marriage. And even though you never married the Brazilian, you would still be you would still be under like the legal consequences of a marriage, right? Because weird enough, nowadays in Brazil, união estável or common law marriage, they are almost the same thing as a marriage, right? So the same rule that whatever you are acquiring during the course of the marriage should be owned by the spouses, that could potentially apply to a união estável type of relationship, okay? Now, the question that is usually asked by, people in this regard is going to be, all right, but, the Brazilian doesn't know about my assets, right? So that's usually a challenge indeed, to Brazilians, like they don't know the assets that you have in the United States or, in Europe or elsewhere. So that could become a challenge for the Brazilian to reach out your assets abroad. But I think it is important for you to understand that from a legal perspective, yes, there is a way for the Brazilian to go after your assets first, based on the união estável, meaning that even if you haven't married, you have lived as in a marriage. And if a Brazilian judge, really, gives the remedies, the legal remedies to the plaintiff's attorney, they could also try to find out the assets you have abroad, and they could try to pursue the assets, right? Now, I'm not sure how much helpful the U.S. Legal system would be to that effect, because I think the common law marriage or the união estável in Brazil, it's not compatible. It's not compatible with the United States legal system, right? I mean, the união estável in Brazil is just out of hand, and I can think of a U.S. judge looking at it and say, listen, this thing doesn't sound fair, right? They never married, and now this person is coming here trying to pursue a U.S. citizen, U.S. citizen's assets. I'm not sure if that would fly, okay? But at the same time, we are just like, sharing ideas over here. I'm not, for certain, I'm not giving you like the definite answers to this question. I'm just actually, sharing nuances of a relationship between a foreign citizen and a Brazilian citizen, if you will. All right. Let me see. We have another question from Aaron. With a digital nomad visa for Portugal, is a nomad required to be tethered there, or can they use it as a springboard to travel across the European Union for a year, 1 month per country? That's a good question, Aaron, because usually for the what we call the national Portuguese visas, you are supposed usually to be at least 6 months per year in the country, okay? And the reasoning here is that they want to be able to tax you, okay? So they want to tax you, and for that to happen, you need to be over 183 days in Portugal. Now that's a fairly advanced question, right? If you are just a month in Portugal and the remaining 11 in other countries that are part of the European Union, if Portugal would say, you know what, like you just in the European Union, almost the same thing as being in Portugal. But if I had it to be a conservative in my answer, Aaron, I would say you would need to stay at least 6 months, a year in Portugal to keep your digital nomad status, all right? But I don't have like certainty in this answer, Aaron. So it's just like an educated guess, if you will. Interesting question for sure. All right, let me see if we have anything else here in our backlog. All right. Currency exchange. Why is it so difficult to open a bank account in Brazil? Right. So this would require a really long answer. Like Brazil traditionally has a history of a regulation of monies entering and leaving the country, which is extremely surprising to those trying to buy property in Brazil. Right? They say, listen, I'm trying to send the money to Brazil to buy a property. Brazil should be pretty happy and say, listen, that's great, right? Like foreign money coming into the country. But for reasons that would take too much time to explain, that's not how it works. There is a lot of red tape and bureaucracy, and traditionally, you're not going to be able to open a regular bank account in Brazil unless you have the resident card, right? So if you just come to Brazil as a tourist and you enter like an everyday bank and you say, oh, I want a bank account, they say, well, not for you, my friend. You're just a tourist, right? Now, this said, we have the so-called non-resident bank account, right? This bank account is not the same thing as an everyday bank account, right? So there is something that we call a non-resident bank account, okay? And this is the one I'm talking about, a non-resident bank account, right? So this is not an everyday bank account. That's a special type of bank account that was designed by the Brazilian government just for foreign citizens, right? And actually not just for foreign citizens, but also Brazilians who are living abroad. For instance, if a Brazilian lives abroad, the Brazilian may want to stop paying taxes in Brazil because they are potentially paying taxes elsewhere. But in order to qualify for that, they need to close their regular bank accounts and open this bank account instead. So the non-resident bank account in Brazil is good for Brazilians living abroad, and it's also good for foreign citizens who are not legal residents in Brazil, okay? And this account is kind of limited. It's not the same thing as a regular bank account, but it does give you access, for instance, for something that those of you who have been traveling to Brazil recently, you probably know about the Pix, right? The Pix payment is something huge. Imagine Zelle, right? Like in the United States, you have Zelle. In Brazil, we have a Pix. And Pix is so pervasive in Brazil that is unbelievable, right? Something that I see happening all the time, and it doesn't cease to amaze me is that like sometimes you are like in Rio de Janeiro, right? Fortaleza, super common. If you are in Fortaleza, you go to the fish market in Mucuripe in the city of Fortaleza. You sit there, to have a nice meal, and at least 5 times during a meal, there is going to be someone asking you for money, right? They're going to say, listen, can you give me some money? I want to buy food. Or can you give me some money? I need to buy diapers for my kid, and so on. And if you tell them, I don't have cash on me, do you know what they are going to ask you next? All right, can you send me a Pix? Meaning that you would get on your cell phone and you would send something comparable to a Zelle payment to this person, believe it or not. So that's how things are in Brazil nowadays. This Pix is just like, so pervasive that you can use it to pay everything. If you go to a drugstore, if you go to a restaurant, if you're going to send money to a friend, if you're going to pay for an invoice, you're pretty much using this Pix feature everywhere. And again, even this type of limited account, the non-resident bank account is going to give you access to the Pix feature. So from this perspective, even though Brazil is super closed, Brazil is not going to get you a regular bank account. You're never going to get a regular bank account unless you are a legal resident. On the other hand, you can have this limited account, even if you are just, traveling in Brazil. Okay, so I hope the information was helpful. Um, we have we have a new question. We have a question from Bill. Luciano, are you all settled in your new office in Rio? That's a good question. I'm gonna try. Let me see. Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah. I'm gonna try to record a video, right? Like we're finishing up. There's still some woodwork, minor woodwork. Like we are replacing some doors. We are getting some cabinets installed. Once we are done, Bill, I'm gonna share, a little bit about our office. I'm gonna record a video about our office in Rio de Janeiro, but it's looking amazing, right? Like even the company who provided the office furniture, they wanted to record. They wanted to record like our office to use in their like advertisement. I said, listen, as long as you don't film our people, right? Like I mean, we don't want our team members to show up in the advertisement. You can do it, right? But I'm gonna do so as soon, Bill, as the woodwork is over. I'm gonna do some sharing here, and I think you guys are gonna like, right? Like I mean, it's pretty nice, it's so interesting because we have like a really nice view of Bahia de Guanabara, which is like a landmark in Brazil, and you can see behind one of the windows, right? So when I do this walkthrough, I'm gonna show to you. Thank you for asking, Bill. We have a Marco. Marco, for U.S. person on Brazil retirement visa, does this person pay capital gain taxes in both countries? Person will live in Brazil and be funded by U.S. investment accounts. All right. So, Marco, first thing, I strongly recommend you to have, a consultation, because taxation, there is always a bunch of ifs. If A, then B, if C, then D, you know what I mean? So it's very difficult to tell you, like this, if you're going to need to pay or not. But traditionally, once you cross the 183 days in Brazil, it does not matter your status, right? Like you could be a tourist, you could be a retiree under the Brazil retirement visa. You could be a digital nomad. You could be anything. You could be even illegally in the country. Once you cross 183 days in the country, you become a tax resident, all right? So this is a fact. That's probably as far as I can go in terms of certainty with you, Marco. So once you become a tax resident, you are subject to the taxation laws in Brazil. And Brazil says, like if you are a tax resident, yes, you need to present all your income on a global basis, meaning that if you have income from the U.S., yes, you need to, disclose this income to Brazil. If you have income from Europe, from, any country, you need to tell Brazil about this income. And now, if you're going to pay taxes or not, is going to depend on different factors, like a calculation of how much you pay in federal taxes abroad, and the brackets that your investments are going to trigger. Usually, Brazil tries to do a reduction of taxes, or better saying, Brazil is going to try to offset your tax liabilities in Brazil with whatever you're paying in federal tax in the country in which you are getting the income, right? So let's say Marco is a U.S. person. Marco is getting capital gains, like in the United States, right? So in theory, you would pay a certain tax bracket in Brazil, okay? But yes, you are subject to Brazilian taxation, and whether or how much you're gonna pay, I think you should consult, Marco, with a tax professional, and based on the overall situation, they are gonna tell you if you're gonna have to pay and how much you're gonna have to pay, Marco. All right. I hope that was helpful. Bill is reminding you guys to please help our channel by liking our live stream. We have right now 14 people in our live stream, and we just have 6 likes. So there is room for more likes. I would appreciate if you could go ahead and like our live stream. Also, a heads up that we're finally gonna have a live stream on Sunday, right? On a Sunday. So we're gonna have a live stream this coming Sunday. It's gonna be on the 20th, right? It's gonna be on the 20th. If you just come to our channel on YouTube, you can click on Notify Me. You find the live stream button. You click on Notify Me, and when the live stream starts, you're gonna receive a notice that we are starting the live stream, and you can join us. I hope you guys enjoyed today's topics, and please like our live stream. And I see you guys on Sunday. You have a blessed rest of your day.